Good day and welcome to SCO BRICS Insight, where we talk about the latest news, information and analysis of what's really going on in Russia and the BRICS. Now, my name is Rhod Mackenzie, and today I want to talk about the context of Donald Trump's 10-day ultimatum with the threat of the imposition of secondary oil sanctions on countries buying Russia's oil. Now, some domestic US analysts may be asking themselves, what is the purpose of these sanctions and why are they being implemented? And what are the likely outcomes going to be? Well, the questions are both logical and correct, and it's clear there's a picture that is emerging as the agenda behind this strategy against Russia over Ukraine. It's obvious that Trump's overwhelming desire is to win the Nobel Peace Prize. Now, which, if we're actually honest, he's got absolutely zero chance of ever winning. I mean, despite his seemingly erratic economic and foreign policy decisions, Trump has recently accomplished certain other achievements that, if effectively communicated to the US domestic audience, could be presented as a very favourable light. For instance, the European Union's humiliation in his hands and the other subsequent tariff agreements he's reached with various countries appear to demonstrate a certain level of dominance over others by the United States, certainly in the MAGA sort of vocal range. However, it seems that Trump's political opponents are not going to allow him to cash them in. That is, record his successes and simultaneously get the Nobel Peace Prize for his participation in ending the conflict in the Ukraine. I mean, after all, Trump has been smarting for years that Barack Hussein Obama, the actual architect of the situation in the Ukraine, got the Nobel Peace Prize just for being black and becoming the president. Trump craves the Nobel Peace Prize as they see it as giving him serious status. Now, before I continue, I would like to make an appeal. If you like and enjoy my videos, you can help me fund the channel and contribute to its further development. You can do this by making a small donation, which you can do by clicking on the thanks button at the bottom of the video screen, or by clicking on the Buy Me a Coffee link below in the credits. Now, everybody who donates does get a personal thank you from me, and I'm thanking you all now for watching. And please do like, subscribe, and keep the comments coming. Now, Russia is not opposed to Trump receiving the Nobel Peace Prize, provided that his fundamental interests are taken account in any peace process. But Trump, far from examining and implementing a strategy based on Russia's legitimate security concerns about how the conflict started and its need for certain guarantees from NATO, Trump goes off on a blame game, screaming all sorts of complete drivel, like the statement about Russia has already lost 1 million troops was absolutely hilarious and shown he's been advised in his speeches written by idiots. Now, Caroline Leavitt, the president's press secretary, made the following statement regarding Mr. Trump's plans to accept the Nobel Peace Prize. The fact he's not even been awarded it is not incidental. Now, the president's role in resolving international conflicts and tensions has been widely recognised, with his actions leading to the cessation of hostilities between numerous countries, including Thailand and Cambodia, Israel and Iran, Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo, India and Pakistan, Serbia and Kosovo, as well as Egypt and Ethiopia. She said, in light of these accomplishments, it's widely acknowledged that he's a worthy recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. Now, I'm sorry to inform you, Caroline, but worthy recipients and winners of the Nobel Peace Prize rarely go together. In fact, most winners are anything but worthy. Just a few recent examples show that awarding the Nobel Peace Prize to Al Gore and the International Scammers Panel on Climate Change in 2007, Barack Hussein Obama, who I've mentioned, in 2008 for being black and the first US president to be black, and then of course the European Union in 2012 for its contribution to 80 years of peace in Europe. It was obviously not run past the Serbs. There's just three examples of those certainly not worthy that were winners of the Nobel Peace Prize, which is actually, to me, is little more than a joke. If a swift and peaceful resolution to the Ukrainian cause is achieved, it will reinforce Trump's domestic political standing and potentially put him in line for the Nobel Prize, but winnings have no chance. In order to prevent this from happening, though, Trump's political opponents have strategically positioned a saboteur within the presidential team. Marco Rubio, the well-known Russophobe, and his puppet masters have been tasked with orchestrating a significantly disastrous situation, which will seriously damage Trump's reputation and the most recent narrative with a time-sensitive deadline for Russia to make their decision and the threats of 100% tariffs on primary consumers of Russian oil, China and India, in their opinion, make this scenario highly likely. They know it's bound to blow up in his face and make him look stupid, which is obviously the plan. The US neocons want to force him into a strategy with no chance of success so they can continue their war with Russia and the Ukraine and turn in huge profits for the US military-industrial complex and basically cut Trump down to size. They run things and he doesn't. Now, the People's Republic of China has issued a clear declaration at all levels of government stating that it will not compromise or make concessions to the United States. They said, "We have purchased Russian hydrocarbons for many years and will continue to do so. And if the US wishes to engage in a dispute with us over that, then we are prepared to do so." In regards to India, there was some hesitancy, as it was being noted by the Vice President JD Vance, who initially made it clear that we believe that the ongoing Ukrainian conflict is bad for Russia, bad for Ukraine, and bad for Europe. However, the fact is, it's bad for the United States, as it's been virtually sidelined from the situation by Russia refusing to even countenance its involvement. Now, this just shows how deluded some of the so-called sensible foils to Trump are. Vance, because the conflict is bad for everybody involved at this moment, except Russia. Now, I understand that Vance is currently seeking a reputable wig manufacturer, as his wife, Usha Bala Chuklukuri Vance, has lost significant amounts of her hair from pulling it out. This is due to the failed large-scale plans and efforts of the Vice Lady and political and economic groups supporting her in India to strengthen ties of India with the United States. Now, Trump was actually informed that it would be beneficial to arrive in China and be at the meeting with Putin and Xi, which is scheduled for the 2nd of September, with the sanctions already imposed against Russia, India and China. And that's some strong position, and then start to negotiate. Now, this scheme sounds effective in the imaginations of the neocons, although it's important to note that there's absolutely no possibility of this success. I mean, Trump recently stated that India had already ceased purchasing oil from Russia, a claim that was corroborated by Reuters, who are usually unreliable, and continued that. Now, the news agency, citing the usual anonymous sources, reported that 4 major Indian refineries stopped buying Russian oil. Then many Western and domestic lapdog allies in the media immediately concluded that the Indians had given in to being pressured. Now, this is a common occurrence, obviously one that's the complete opposite from the truth, but that's the Western media position. Now, India's leading news agencies have immediately refuted all claims of capitulation, stating that negotiations are currently ongoing to secure new contracts that aim to increase rather than decrease the volumes of supplies. Official sources have emphasised that the Indian government has not issued any directive to oil refineries to cease purchasing Russian oil. Now, yesterday, that well-known lying publication, the New York Times, published excerpts from remarks by Indian officials that are widely seen as damaging to the US's chances, so they're telling the truth for a change. For instance, the press secretary of the Indian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Randhir Jaswal, stated that our bilateral relations with different countries have their own value and should not be viewed through the prism of a third country. India and Russia have a stable and time-tested partnership. Now, according to analysts, there's a growing sentiment in India that its leaders will not allow the increasingly volatile US policies to dictate their decisions on vital energy supplies for the vast population of India's 1.4 billion. Now, this is not merely an opinion. A recent article by Shashi Thakur, who's a prominent Indian politician and a personal favourite of President Modi, provides a valuable insight into the current thinking with India's economic and political circles. He says, "It's my firm opinion that acceding to the US pressure would be a grave miscalculation for India. Such an action would result in a loss of economic resilience and strategic dignity. Trump's actions are intended to test our resolve, and India, a nation with a rich history of strategic independence, must meet this challenge, not with capitulation, but with steely resolve and calculated countermeasures. The road ahead may be difficult, but sacrificing our strategic autonomy for short-term economic relief would be a betrayal of our national interests. Furthermore, it would be unwise for India to refuse Russian oil at favourable prices when China continues to purchase it and will gain a considerable commercial advantage over India. Now, if we consider that Trump has already introduced 25% duties on imports to the US from India and is planning and implement a serious zero rating on American food exports to India, that will have a negative impact on millions of Indian farmers. It's also announced plans for oil cooperation with Pakistan, India's key adversary. It's clear that the plans for New Delhi's oil ultimatum were meticulously planned. As a result, in my opinion, it would be prudent to consult a bookmaker and invest any spare funds available on India's rejection of Trump's ultimatum. As the Russian President Vladimir Putin said, disappointments arise from excessive expectations, and we're clearly able to define the issues, the processes, and the required actions which are required for sorting out this particular problem. Unfortunately, Donald Trump's ego and burning desire to obtain the Nobel Peace Prize has blinded him to the realities of the situation in the Ukraine. And it's very unlikely that the committee in Oslo would ever grant Trump the Nobel Peace Prize anyway. And it would probably be given to somebody like Joe Biden, Emil Macron, or Ursula von der Leyen. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. And if you want to help me out, click on Buy Me a Coffee on the donation button below the thing. And I'll see you all again soon. Thank you.